Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have a look at the latest from the live radar, run through the weather warnings as we do still have wind warnings, wind warnings issued for Scotland through tomorrow evening into Wednesday. Could be 60, 70 mile per hour gusts in places. We'll then go over to the UKV, have a look at the precipitation temperature and the wind gusts over the next few days. It is still remaining fairly dry in the south, more unsettled in the north, but nothing too special for this time of year. And generally temperatures hovering around average, being slightly below and slightly above at times. As we head into the end of the week into next week, as we'll look at the GFS, ECMWF and the Ensembles, it's going to be a battle between high pressure and low pressure. Definitely the signal over the last few days has been for higher pressure to move in and to dominate, and that is still the theme around that day 7 to day 10 point. But a lot of the runs today are starting to show a breakdown of that higher pressure around that day 10 point, with the westerly winds, with the strong tropospheric polar vortex eventually winning out. And yes, it does look likely it will dominate a lot of the time in the north, even when high pressure does build into the south. But this sort of pattern in the longer term could give unsettled conditions quite widely, and then perhaps quite stormy conditions in place as well. So have a look at that in the second half of the video. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, make sure you like and subscribe, and remember to follow me on Twitter as well, the link's in the description. Now, if we do look at the live radar, we're recording this a little bit earlier than normal, but around 9 AM right now, and you can see it is generally clear skies out there. There are a few showers across Scotland, but again, nothing too much, and a weather front will push into Scotland, but probably arriving later this afternoon into the evening, and for some areas not even until overnight. So windy today, it's a pretty dry day, a lot of sunshine out there, but there will be some clouds that do pop up here or there. So yeah, pretty pleasant day, temperatures around average for the time of year, probably slightly above in the south, probably still slightly below further northwards. Now, if you put on the temperatures as of around 9 AM, you can see it is a cool morning, but nothing especially cold at all. A few areas hitting those blues and lighter blues, indicating low single digits, but still some areas in the yellows already, so mid to high single digits, and those temperatures will be rising by a degree or so, or maybe a little bit more than that through this afternoon, to give temperatures widely around average, if not slightly above, as I said, in the south, and maybe still slightly below further northwards. So pretty pleasant day today, pretty nice late January day, nothing too much going on. But the big important thing, of course, is that it is dry, which I think is one of the most important things this time of year. If you look at the weather warnings, we do have a yellow wind warning issued for Scotland. Again, we looked at this in detail yesterday, but I'll run through it quite quickly. From tomorrow night, 8 PM until 9 AM on Wednesday. Again, it could be 60 miles per hour quite widely, and maybe as high as 80 miles per hour. And the latest UKV has backed off from those higher wind speeds. It's more down to sort of that 50 to 70 mile per hour range. Very much warranted of a yellow warning, but nothing too substantial. Of course, high impact, low likelihood. So look at that latest UKV, the likelihood of those 70, 80 mile per hour gusts is slightly lower, so I don't think this will be upgraded this morning. But you never know. We'll have to see what the Met Office puts out later today. But there could be a amber warning upgrade at very short notice, perhaps in somewhere in Scotland. But at the moment, I'm not seeing the model data to reflect that. So if we do go over to the UKV and have a look at the precipitation, temperature and wind gusts over the course of the next 5 days, you can see at the moment nothing too much is going on. Pretty dry. There will be increasing cloud amounts in from the west through this afternoon, but it is a dry and pretty sunny day for many southern and eastern areas. You see where the front does head in and start to impact areas late afternoon to the early evening, and it will become more widespread through Scotland and Northern Ireland into Republic of Ireland overnight, really. And as it heads southwards, it does fizzle out once again and could give some light rain in places through the early hours of Tuesday. But for many through Tuesday in the day, it is dry, it is sunny, but if you go to Northern Ireland or Scotland, heavy showers are starting to roll in from the west, and quite heavy wintry showers for Scotland, as it's quite a cool air mass running around the high pressure in the north there, which could give rise to these wintry showers. Overnight into Wednesday, that's when we get those very blustery winds. Could be some very heavy showers with that, and that's where we could see some blizzard conditions over the higher ground. But remember, this snow will be pretty much exclusively over moderate to high hills, and of course, accumulating snow is really only over the highest hills. So we'll have to take that into account. It's not widespread snow, but it will be widely pretty cold and snow over the higher ground, wintry mix to lower lying areas. As we head into the 1st of February, quite heavy snow there in places over the higher ground into the early hours of Wednesday. Bit of banding there within the showers, sort of forming together into a larger area of quite heavy precipitation. And then into Wednesday afternoon, you can see eventually a weather front does slowly spread southwards. But again, not giving a lot of precipitation along it, and just generally thicker clouds. So Wednesday looked quite a drab day to start February, and yeah, going to be quite cloudy with some drizzle and rain around, especially in the north. Through Wednesday into Thursday looking likely to be another showery day with the weather front heading into the north, but again, nothing too substantial further southwards, just generally cloud and a bit of drizzle, and that continues into Friday and staying quite drab and drizzly out there for eventually things to try and clear for Friday into Saturday, but still keeping trapped under this cloudiness. And you can look at the mean sea level pressure. It's because we've got a southwesterly wind dragging in weather fronts, but we're still under high pressure influence, so it's squeezing those weather fronts away and stopping them taking a real grip over us, and instead just leaving the remnants of their cloud and drizzly patches over the top of us, keeping us quite horrible out there. So not particularly great conditions towards the end of this week, but still, nevertheless, it is dry. If you look at the wind gusts as we head through Tuesday evening, you can see 50, 60 or even 70 mile per hour gusts in places, but nowhere near as intense as yesterday's runs, which did show wind gusts maybe 70 or 80 miles per hour. More purples appearing here. Here really only 50, 60 mile per hour inland, maybe 70 mile per hour towards the coast. So definitely downgraded since the run we had a look at yesterday. For on the max temperatures, you can see today generally around average, maybe slightly above in the south, getting up towards 7 to 9 degrees, cooler further northwards down towards the mid to low single digits. Overnight tonight, temperatures won't drop away too much, maybe down towards the mid to low single digits, nothing too cold. And then into Tuesday afternoon, again, temperatures rising to maybe 8 to 10 degrees in the far south, more towards the low single digits, if not towards freezing further northwards. To start February, we wake up to generally cold morning, but nothing especially cold. Most areas will still be above freezing, apart from the highlands of Scotland. And you can see into Wednesday afternoon, generally average to maybe slightly above average, 8 to 10 degrees for many areas in the south. Still cold in areas of Scotland. Into Thursday, again, temperatures quite a bit above average there, 10 to 12 degrees perhaps, and even into Scotland getting well up into the mid to high single digits, so definitely thawing quite a bit there. And then into Friday, still stuck in that milder air mass in the south, maybe 10 to 13 degrees, really quite mild, mildest it's been in a number of weeks there. So yeah, that would be really quite warm for this time of year. And eventually into Saturday, you can see those overnight temperatures not dropping much below 7 to 9 degrees. Again, indicating a generally warm air mass, again trapped under that cloud. It keeps that warm area of air over the top of us. And you look at the upper air temperatures, they're not ridiculously warm, but they're not ridiculously cold either. And it leaves that trapped layer of warmth under that cloud. Sort of the same thing as really the same as an inversion, but just keeping a warm layer of air towards the surface instead of a cold layer of air. So yeah, we'll have to see exactly how it does play out, but the next sort of 5 days looks generally dry in the south, probably sunny initially, but turning cloudier and probably slightly milder further northwards, up and down from colder and milder conditions with some winteriness and general precipitation around. So yeah, not too much going on over the next 5 days. Now, do look at the longer range, go over to the GFS and see what that is showing over the course of the next couple of weeks. You can see a northwesterly flow at the moment, but high pressure still dominating in the south, low pressure dominating further northwards. You see high pressure takes more of an influence as we head into the weekend, into next week, but as it starts to properly build in, we see a big area of low pressure run out of southern Greenland and northeast Canada, and this sort of stops establishing itself over the top of us, and in the longer range, high pressure continues to try and build in, But as I said, it's around that day 10 range now, where the majority of the ensemble members have low pressure breaking through, giving us very unsettled conditions in the longer term, especially in the north, very tight isobars. And remember, you don't have to be under the centre of the low to see the stormy conditions. You just need to be under those tighter isobars, and we are seeing that in places around that day 10 to day 14 time frame. However, high pressure does continue to try and build in, but it's sort of in the sort of middle ground between being under the higher pressure and being under the low pressure. So for many areas, probably apart from the far southeast, it will be quite varied. Some days will be drier and milder, some days will be cooler and wetter. So yeah, not particularly great. We'll have to see. It could sway either way. It could turn more stormy, or it could turn more dry and settled. We'll have to see. But it definitely has swayed more towards that unsettled theme in the last 24 hours. But again, it could just be some anomalous runs. We could still be on that general trend of higher pressure. If we do look at the GEM, see how that does compare. Again, high pressure building in the south at the moment, continues to take over into the weekend and start of next week, but eventually low pressure shoves it out of its way, and we see very unsettled and pretty stormy conditions developing there to our north. Again, the extent of it pushing southwards is still very uncertain. It would be very stormy through northwest Scotland, but southeast England would be blustery, but still under the higher pressure. You wouldn't expect too much from this at all. Big contrasts developing there. But again, that low pressure shifts a couple hundred miles further southwards. We'd all be in a very stormy pattern. But then the high pressure shifts further northwards by a few hundred miles. We'd all be drier and probably milder as well. So again, we'll have to see exactly how it does play out, but still a little bit stuck in the middle from the runs here at day 10 with no distinctive pattern, just sort of in between weather patterns, and we'll have to see which one wins out. Now, if you look at the ECMWF, again, higher pressure building in at the moment, dominating into the weekend and starts next week, but still low pressure incursions into the north, and eventually into early next week, high pressure is pretty much in control for all. But eventually, as we saw with the other runs, low pressure comes tumbling back in, even more the low pressure influence here. Still some high pressure towards the south, but you see those yellows and that black thick line, which generally shows the position of the jet stream is further southwards than both the GM and the GFS. So the ECMWF probably favouring here more unsettled pattern. And you see this low exiting northeast Canada. This is probably going to be whipped up by the jet and head straight for northern and western parts of the UK, around the southern tip of this big mother low. So this could go very unsettled and stormy, but again, we will have to see. We keep seeing differing runs. We're still seeing some colder runs as well, where that high pressure does push in, develop towards Scandinavia, hold the Atlantic at bay, and pull easterly winds. So things are still very much up in the air, but the latest 3 operational runs all have higher pressure more in control the next week, and then as we head towards day 10, more lower pressure influence in from the west. Now, if we look at the ensemble members to finish the video, again, from the GFS generally around average over the course of the next couple of weeks, but some ensemble members deviating quite a lot from average, some going quite mild, but you can see there are still those 5 or 6 runs going bitterly cold. As I said, those are the ones putting in the easterly winds with the high pressure pushing further northwards. Precipitation definitely has decreased massively over the last few days and is now pretty minimal all the way to around the 10th of February, so the next 10 days. And again, you look at the sea level pressure, still generally high pressure in the south towards London, but there still is quite a bit of spread from around the 7th, 8th of February onwards. And again, even subtle 5 or 10 millibar changes can be the difference between dry and sunny and more cloudy and showery, windy sort of pattern. Again, if we compare it to the ECMWF, again, more around average to slightly above average, but very similar. Still those cold, anomalous runs, maybe 5 or 6 of them. And again, precipitation is pretty minimal in the short to mid-range. And again, look at the sea level pressure. Generally high pressure, but still quite a few low pressure outliers developing there. Perhaps quite a big cluster developing as well. And then if we finally compare it to the Glasgow run for the GFS, you can see generally, again, around average, but of course, Glasgow's average is slightly colder than London's, so average here would still be a couple of degrees cooler than London, and you can see a much more unsettled theme. Again, the pattern of that low pressure influence being much stronger further northwards. And you look at the sea level pressure, still periods of high pressure, especially next week, but still more trending towards neutral to lower pressure, again giving rise to more precipitation, decaying weather fronts and showers. So it doesn't look like too much has changed since yesterday. Perhaps, though, more of a low-pressure influence in from the west. It's continuing, though, to look fairly settled for the rest this week in the south. Slightly more unsettled further northwards, but nothing too crazy. But there could be quite a wild, blustery, windy night through tomorrow night into Wednesday, perhaps with some heavy snow in places over higher ground as well. So do make sure you take caution with that. But elsewhere, make sure you go out and enjoy the dry weather. Yes, it's not particularly mild. It's slightly above average in places this week. Not amazingly mild, but do make sure you go out and enjoy it, as it is pretty decent conditions for this time of year. So anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.